I didn't believe in omens. But New Year's Eve has a way of turning ordinary moments into something heavier, like the world is holding its breath. We were driving home just after midnight, the kind of quiet that only exists once the fireworks die out and everyone else is already asleep. The road ahead was empty, slick with ice, my headlights cutting a narrow tunnel through falling snow. And then I saw her standing perfectly still in the middle of the road, facing us like she'd been waiting. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. We'd been at a party thrown together at the last minute, nothing wild, just drinks and loud music to push us into the new year. My girlfriend at the time, Duda, had dozed off in the passenger seat while I drove. I remember feeling exhausted but wired, the way you feel when the night should be over but your body hasn't caught up yet. The streets were nearly deserted, and I was grateful for it. Snow had fallen earlier, leaving the asphalt glossy and dangerous. I had the heat turned up and a rock playlist on low just to stay awake. We were about 10 minutes from her place. When the road ahead stopped being empty, she wasn't crossing. She wasn't stumbling. She was just there, standing dead center, staring straight into the headlights. My brain lagged, like it couldn't accept what my eyes were seeing. I slammed the brakes before I even realized I'd done it. That's when I noticed the knife hanging loosely at her side, a long kitchen blade, the kind you'd carve a turkey with. The light caught her face, twisted and wet, like she'd been crying or screaming for a long time. I swerved right to avoid her. The instant I did, she lunged. I heard the impact before I understood it. The knife scraped against metal as we passed, a sound that sliced through me. The swerve plus the ice was too much. The tires lost grip and the car spun, a sickening, helpless rotation. Dudar woke up screaming. I gripped the wheel like it mattered, but the car did what it wanted. We came to a stop facing the way we'd come from, which meant we were facing her again. She was about 30 feet away, still holding the knife, illuminated like something staged for a horror movie. She was limping toward us, fast but uneven, screaming something I couldn't understand. Not words, just a raw, animal sound. Her clothes were torn and filthy, her hair matted to her face. There was nothing behind her eyes. No fear, no confusion, just emptiness. She looked like a dead thing that hadn't realized it was dead yet. Dudar yelled at me to do something. I couldn't move. I couldn't look away. She was 15 feet away when instinct finally snapped me back. I threw the car into drive and floored it. The tires spun uselessly for a second before catching. We lurched forward. I thought we were clear. I was wrong. One moment she was in front of the car, the next she was on it. She slammed onto the hood, so hard the whole car shuddered. Duda screamed my name. The woman clung with one hand and stabbed the windshield with the other, over and over, the blade flashing inches from my face. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. I just swerved the wheel left and right, violently, trying to shake her off. She slid across the hood, nails screeching, but she wouldn't let go. Her face pressed close to the glass, eyes locked on. Mine, screaming that same wordless scream. On the third hard swerve, she lost her grip. I watched her roll off the hood and hit the pavement, sliding into the shoulder. The car fishtailed again, but this time I managed to keep control. In the rearview mirror, she lay still, not moving. A horrible thought hit me that I might have killed her. that she might have been a mentally ill woman who needed help, and I had just left her there to die. I slowed instinctively. Doodah grabbed my arm, shaking, telling me not to stop. She said it wasn't our problem, that we'd been drinking, that the police wouldn't believe us, that we'd get arrested. None of it made sense looking back, but in that moment, her words felt urgent and logical. She always had that effect on people. So I drove. I didn't tell anyone, not the police, not my friends. The damage to the car was minimal: cracked windshield, knife marks along the driver's side window, scratches on the hood. No blood. I got it fixed a week later, but the guilt stayed. For months, I checked the news, waiting to see anything about a body found on that road. A missing person. There was nothing. Part of me hoped she'd gotten up and walked away. Part of me was terrified of that possibility. What disturbed me almost as much was Doodah. Within days, she was acting like nothing had happened, making plans, laughing. When I tried to talk about it, she got annoyed, told me I was being dramatic. We broke up a few months later for other reasons, but that night changed how I saw her. You don't forget something like that. You don't just move on. Every New Year's Eve since, I think about that road. I think about the woman in the headlights. I think about how close I came to dying or to killing someone. Midnight doesn't feel like a celebration anymore. It feels like a warning. So tell me, if you were in my place, would you have stopped or driven away? Subscribe for more true New Year's Eve horror stories. New Year's Eve in the city always feels unreal, like everyone agrees to suspend reality for one night. I spent that year bouncing between pre-games with friends before ending up at a rooftop party in Williamsburg. It was loud, crowded, and freezing. The kind of place where strangers talk like they've known each other forever because midnight is coming and no one wants to be alone when it hits. Around 11:30, I noticed her standing by the bar. She wasn't scrolling on her phone or talking to anyone, just watching the room, calm in a way that stood out. I walked over, introduced myself, and within minutes we were laughing like old friends. Her name was Matra. She said people usually called her Maitri, like it was a joke she'd told 100 times before. She took a pen and wrote it on my hand so I wouldn't forget. When the countdown started, she pulled me onto the dance floor. We kissed right at midnight, fireworks exploding outside the windows. It felt electric, like the night had narrowed down to just the two of us. By 12:30, she asked if I wanted to get out of there. We grabbed an Uber back to my apartment in the East Village, the city still buzzing as we slipped into quiet streets. The night blurred the way good nights do. We talked for hours. She told me she was from San Diego, that she was a painter, that she used to do graffiti before switching to canvas. She mentioned her cats Mia and Cosmoland laughed when I told her that was weirdly specific. Her birthday was April 28th. Her dad was a patent lawyer. Random details, but they stuck. At some point, she said, her clothes smelled like the bar, so I tossed them in the wash and gave her one of my t-shirts. We fell asleep sometime after that. When I woke up, she was gone. At first, I didn't think much of it. People leave after hookups. It happens. I rolled over, stretched, and got up to use the bathroom. That's when I noticed the door. My apartment. Door locks only from the outside with a key. It doesn't auto-lock. The deadbolt was still engaged. That meant either she'd somehow locked it from the outside. Without a key, or she'd never left at all. I checked the apartment. It's small. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a living room, and a kitchen. No second exit. The windows barely open. I even checked the closet, feeling ridiculous as I did it. She wasn't there. Her clothes were gone from the dryer. The t-shirt I lent her was missing. Proof she'd been there. Proof she'd left. But how? I spent the day pacing, replaying every moment, wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. But I couldn't have imagined details like that. Late that afternoon, I felt this sudden, inexplicable urge to call my friend Garrett. We'd gone to college together at Berkeley, and though he lived in Hong Kong now, we talked regularly. We caught up, joked about New Year's, and then I noticed something off in his voice. When I asked, he sighed and told me he'd met a girl the night before. They'd gone back to his place. She left in the morning without saying goodbye. No number, no contact. He was bummed about it. I laughed and told him the same thing had happened to me. That's when he told me her name was Matra. A chill ran through me. I asked him to describe her. As he talked, my stomach sank. From San Diego, a painter, used to do graffiti. Birthday, April 28th. I cut him off and asked if she had a cat named Mia. There was a long pause before he said yes. We compared notes for 15 minutes. Every detail lined up. Then he showed me pictures he'd taken with her. It was her. The exact same girl. Here's the problem. Hong Kong is 13 hours ahead of New York. Garrett met her around 11 p.m. on December 31st in Hong Kong. I met her around 11:30 p.m. on December 31st in New York. Even if she'd left his apartment immediately. A flight between those cities takes at least 15 hours. The math didn't work. It was impossible. We tried to rationalize it. Identical twins, coincidence, lies. None of it made sense. How would she know the same details? How would she end up at that exact party? How would she vanish from a locked apartment? Neither of us ever saw her again. We tried looking her up artistes from San Diego named Matra but found nothing. New Year's Eve is coming up again now, and the more time passes, the worse it feels. The memory hasn't faded. It's sharpened. Sometimes I wonder if I kissed a ghost at midnight. I know how that sounds, but I don't have a better explanation. So what do you think? Was she human or something else entirely? Subscribe for more true New Year's Eve horror stories. New Year's Eve that year was supposed to be quiet. No parties, no crowds, no city noise. Just my family, a rented house, and the promise of starting fresh somewhere peaceful. We'd driven out earlier that day to a small place tucked deep into a snowy rural area. The kind of town where fireworks echoed louder because there was nothing else around to swallow the sound. The house sat slightly isolated, surrounded by trees weighed down with snow. Porch lights glowing weakly against the dark dot. By the time night fell, the world outside felt sealed off. Snow kept drifting down, thick and steady, muffling everything. Inside, we had music playing softly, drinks poured, snacks laid out on the table. The TV was on, tuned to a live New Year's broadcast, waiting for the countdown. Everything felt normal, comfortably slow, almost too calm. Around 11:50, something felt off. I couldn't explain it at the time, but the air in the room felt heavy, like static before a storm. The music sounded distant, even though it wasn't loud. I checked my phone. No service. That wasn't unusual for the area, but it still added to the unease. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows lightly. At 11:58, we all gathered around the TV. The hosts were smiling, shouting over the noise of a crowd somewhere far away. The countdown graphics filled the screen. 10 seconds. 9, 8. I remember smiling, glass raised, heart light in that familiar way it always is, right before a new year begins. 3, 2, 1. Nothing happened. The screen froze, not glitched. Not blacked out, just frozen on 12 a.m. No cheers. No fireworks. No sound at all. The music behind us stopped at the exact same moment, cutting off mid-note. The silence hit so hard it felt physical. At first, we laughed. Someone joked about the Wi-Fi, even though we weren't streaming. Someone else said the cable probably cut out. A few seconds passed, then a minute, then 2. The clock on the wall still read 12 o'clock. My phone buzzed in my hand, still no service. But the time hadn't changed. That's when the fireworks started. At least, that's what it sounded like. Distant pops and booms echoed through the snow, but they were wrong. Too slow, too irregular. And they weren't coming from the town, they were coming from the woods behind the house. We moved to the windows, peering out into the dark. Bright flashes lit up the trees in bursts of white and pale blue, illuminating the snow for just a split second at a time. There were no colors, no trails, just sudden light, followed by silence. Then another flash, then another. Someone said maybe hunters were out there. Someone else suggested kids messing around. But it was New Year's Eve, well past midnight. And no one sane would be deep in those woods during a snowstorm. I checked the TV again. Still frozen. The hosts' faces locked in mid-celebration, mouths open, hands raised. The sound never came back. The clock on the microwave read 12 o'clock. The clock in the hallway read 12 o'clock. Every device in the house showed the same time. Midnight wasn't passing. The flashes outside grew closer. With each one, the shadows of the trees shifted in unnatural ways, stretching too far, bending where they shouldn't. I had the creeping feeling that something out there was moving between the flashes, using the darkness to hide. Then came the knocking. It was slow, heavy, 3 knocks on the back door, spaced evenly apart. Not frantic, not loud, deliberate. We all froze. No one spoke. No one moved. The knocking came again, 3 more hits, harder this time. Snow fell from the porch roof with the vibration. Someone whispered that maybe it was a neighbor. Another person shook their head. We were miles from the nearest house. The knocking stopped. Silence returned. Then the fireworks, or whatever they were, went off again, closer now. The light filled the living room through the windows, bright enough to cast sharp shadows across the walls. In one of those flashes, I swear I saw a shape standing at the edge of the trees, tall, still, watching. I blinked, and it was gone. Minutes passed, or hours. It was impossible to tell. Midnight never moved. The air felt colder inside the house, our breath faintly visible. Every now and then, the knocking would return, always in sets of 3. We never opened the door. We didn't even speak anymore, like we were afraid sound would invite whatever was outside in. Then, without warning, everything snapped back. The TV resumed mid-cheer, fireworks exploding on screen in bright color. Music blared from the speakers. My phone buzzed with notifications all at once. The clock jumped from 12 o'clock to 12:07 like nothing had happened. Outside, the woods were dark and silent, snow undisturbed. No knocking, no flashes, nothing. We didn't talk about it much after that. We packed up early the next morning and left as soon as the roads were clear enough. No one wanted to stay another night. Every New Year's Eve since, I watch the countdown closely. I make sure midnight passes, because part of me is still afraid that one year, it won't. What would you have done if midnight refused to end? Subscribe for more true New Year's Eve horror stories. That New Year's Eve was never supposed to be memorable. My family had stayed home, opting out of parties and fireworks because of the weather. A heavy snowstorm had rolled in right after midnight, burying the streets and turning the neighborhood into something quiet and unfamiliar. By 1 a.m., most of the houses were dark, the kind of darkness that feels deeper in winter, when sound doesn't travel and everything feels sealed off. I stayed up later than everyone else, sitting in the living room with the TV on low, scrolling through my phone and half watching old New Year's coverage. Outside, snow kept falling in thick, slow sheets, illuminated by the streetlight at the end of the driveway. It felt peaceful in that strange, empty way nights sometimes do after a holiday ends. I finally went upstairs around 2:30 a.m. and got into bed. The house was completely still. No wind, no cars, no fireworks anymore. Just silence. I must have drifted off for a little while, because the next thing I remember is waking up suddenly with that awful feeling that someone is standing nearby. My room was dark except for the faint glow of my alarm clock. 3:11 a.m., that's when I heard a voice. It came from downstairs, faint but clear enough to make out the words, "Happy New Year." I sat up immediately, my heart pounding. It sounded calm, friendly, even, like someone smiling while they said it. One listened hard, waiting for footsteps or laughter, something to explain it. Nothing followed, just silence. I told myself it was probably the TV. Maybe I'd left it on and it was echoing up the stairs. I got out of bed and opened my door slowly. The hallway was dark. The TV downstairs was off. Every light in the house was off. Before I could process that, the voice came again. "Happy New Year." This time it was louder. Closer, it was coming from the front door. I froze at the top of the stairs, my hand gripping the railing. The voice wasn't slurred or rushed. It didn't sound drunk or confused. It sounded deliberate, like whoever was speaking wanted to be heard. I whispered my dad's name, thinking maybe he'd gone outside for some reason. No answer. I whispered again, louder. Still nothing. Then came the knocking. 3 slow knocks. On the front door, knock, knock, knock. Each one echoed through the house. My stomach dropped. No one knocks like that at 3 in the morning, especially not during a snowstorm. I crept back into my room, locked the door, and grabbed my phone. No missed calls, no messages, no alerts. I debated calling the police, but what would I even say? Someone knocked and said, "Happy New Year." The knocking stopped. I lay there in bed, barely breathing, listening. Minutes passed. Just when I started to think it was over, my phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor across the street. "Did you hear that?" I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. I texted back, asking what they meant. The reply came almost instantly. "Someone's been knocking on doors. We heard it too. Did they come to yours?" Before I could respond, the voice returned. This time, it wasn't at the front door. It was right outside my bedroom window. "Happy New Year." The words were softer now, almost playful. I couldn't see outside. My curtains were drawn, but I could sense someone standing there, just on the other side of the glass. I slid down against the wall and covered my mouth to keep from making a sound. Footsteps crunched in the snow outside, slow and deliberate, moving away from my window. Then more knocking. Another house. Same pattern. 3 knocks. The same greeting, eventually. The sounds faded into the distance. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When morning finally came, I looked outside. Fresh snow covered everything. Smooth and untouched decks, for one set of footprints. They stopped directly in front of our door. No prints leading away, no path down the driveway. Just footprints that ended there, as if whoever made them had simply vanished later that day. Neighbors talked. Everyone on the block had heard the knocking. Some heard the voice. Some didn't. No one saw anyone. No cameras caught anything. The police were called, but there was nothing they could do. The next New Year's Eve, it happened again. Same time, same voice, same knocking. And every year since, at exactly 3:11 a.m., someone wishes us a happy new year from outside. We never open the door. What would you do if someone knocked at your door after midnight and spoke your language? Too calmly. Subscribe for more true New Year's Eve horror stories. New Year's Eve has always been loud where I live. Fireworks, music, people shouting into the cold night. It's the one time of year when noise feels expected, comforting even. That's why what happened that night took so long to register as wrong. At first, it sounded like a celebration. It took me far too long to realize it wasn't. I was staying at my parents' place that year, a house sitting on the edge of a small wooded area outside town. Not rural enough to be isolated, but quiet enough that you could hear when something didn't belong. Midnight had come and gone, the countdown finished, glasses clinked, hugs exchanged. By about 12:30 a.m., most people had gone to bed. I stayed up in the living room, scrolling through my phone, listening to the occasional pop of fireworks fading into the distance. Around 12:47, I heard another burst. It didn't come from town. It came from the forest behind the house. At first, I brushed it off. Sound travels strangely in winter, especially with snow on the ground. A firework could echo, bounce, sound closer than it really was. But then another went off, and another. Each one came from a slightly different direction. Deeper among the trees, I muted my phone and listened. The sounds were duller than normal fireworks. No whistle, no crackle, just a low thump, followed by a faint echo. Then a flash of light lit up the tree line, white, not colorful, too bright, too sudden. I stood up and walked to the back window. The forest was dark, snow blanketing the ground in uneven drifts. Then another flash went off. For just a second, the trees were illuminated and I swear I saw shapes between them. Tall, thin silhouettes that vanished as soon as the light faded. My heart started pounding, but I told myself it was just shadows. The brain fills in gaps when it's tired. Then I heard screaming. It was faint, almost buried under the sound of the next firework, but it was unmistakable. Not cheering, not laughter. A scream, sharp and panicked, cut off abruptly. I stepped back from the window. My parents were asleep upstairs. I thought about waking them, but I didn't even know what I'd say. Hey, I think the fireworks in the woods are actually screams didn't sound real. Even to me. Another flash lit up the trees. Closer this time. I noticed something else then. The flashes were rhythmic, not random like fireworks. There was a pattern. To them, almost like a countdown restarting. A pause, a flash, a pause, another flash. Each time, the light crept closer to the house. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera, thinking if I recorded it, I'd feel less crazy. The moment I pointed it at the window, the screen glitched. The image lagged, froze, then went black. My phone rebooted on its own. That's when the knocking started, not on the door, on the back of the house. Something hit the siding once, then again, slow, heavy, like someone testing the structure. I backed away, my pulse pounding in my ears. Another scream echoed from the forest, this one closer, followed immediately by a flash so bright it filled the entire room with white light. In that instant, I saw them clearly. There were people in the woods, or things shaped like people. Dozens of them, standing perfectly still between the trees, facing the house. Their outlines were wrong, too tall, too narrow. They didn't move, even as the light faded. The knocking stopped. Silence returned, heavy and complete. I stood there, shaking, staring at the darkness beyond the glass. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. No more flashes. No more sounds. Eventually, I forced myself to move, locking the back door and pulling the curtains shut. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I went outside. The snow was untouched, set for a wide, flattened path leading from the forest to the edge of our yard. No footprints, no tracks, just an area where the snow looked pressed down, as if something massive had passed through without leaving individual steps. Later that day, I checked local social media groups. A few people mentioned hearing fireworks late at night from places that didn't make sense. One post stood out. Did anyone else hear screaming after midnight? No one replied. The next New Year's Eve, I stayed inside with the curtains closed. At 12:47 a.m., I heard the first dull thump from the forest again. I didn't look this time. I just turned off the lights and waited for it to stop. It always does. But every year, right after midnight, I listen for fireworks. And every year, I wonder how many people mistake the sound for celebration, never realizing something else is counting down in the dark. If you heard fireworks coming from the woods after midnight, would you go look? Subscribe for more very scary true New Year's Eve horror stories.